right, the story that's been dominating the national sports scene. Dan Hurley, Lakers, UConn. Everything in the NBA was going through UConn this weekend, and Don Amore is up in Storrs, Connecticut right now at about 1:45. We found out Dan Hurley was staying in Storrs. I think it was Thursday I saw you calling it, saying you thought that Dan Hurley would stay in Storrs. What gave you that feeling last week, Dom?
Well, the one thing I know about Dan Hurley is that he cares very deeply, sometimes too much, about what people think of him. And I really felt that the idea of leaving these kids that he just recruited, or convinced to come or stay at UConn in June when they would be kind of marooned here, I just didn't think he could do that. I felt like the idea that he did wrong by these kids would tear him up. If it were April or May and they would have time, the school would have time to adjust, I think he could have left with a clear conscience, and I wouldn't have blamed him because it's the Lakers and it's a lot of money. But I didn't think he could leave with a clear conscience in June. And the way Dan is, if you've been around him, if you've talked to him, you probably know too, I didn't think he'd be able to reconcile that. So I just didn't think he'd be able to leave. That was my instinct, and probably should have wrote it harder, but thank you for mentioning it.
My instinct, Dom, is that the players are jumping for joy right now unless they're at practice as we speak. And then my other instinct is, man, the bar kind of just got raised a little bit higher. I mean, it should be a 3-peat or bust kind of year because of this decision and the roster that's here and just everything being in flux on the weekend is now we're just setting the tone and everyone's in place for trying to 3-peat. I don't know if you've talked to any players or talked to any of the other coaches from the coaching staff, but what is your feeling about going forward with Hurley as head coach again?
Well, they're sequestered in the gym practicing. We haven't seen anybody yet. They're telling us that we might as well leave because no one's going to talk to us, but, we're not dispersing yet. But my feeling is this. You put yourself in the position of anyone who plays for UConn. How hard are you going to work? How hard are you going to play for somebody who's just told you that he turned down Kentucky and he turned down the Lakers to stay here and coach you, right? How hard are you going to play for that coach? Pretty darn hard. So I think you're right. I think it ups the ante, ups the intensity. It just kind of, I think it kicks everything up. Even the expectations couldn't be any higher, but I think it kicks everything up even higher in terms of excitement and confidence and all the other things you want in a program. So I don't see how it could be anything but that.
Well, and he's the kind of guy when we're watching just the video of practice, he's like a boot camp sergeant. I mean, he is on these guys talking about we over me and don't let these other guys down just when you're running upstairs. I mean, you're not going to get the same reaction in the NBA from LeBron or Anthony Davis or anybody that is. It's not even just about the money. These are professionals now. They're grown men. They have wife and kids, whatever. It's a totally different animal. 18 to 23 or 24-year-olds is a totally different animal. You're able to reach them, coach them, make an effect on their lives, build better humans. Gino, I mean, listen, Ben brought this up last week, and I agree with him on this. They have the same agent, but they're also really good friends. And Gino was talking about when they were on the coach's, caravan deal that they were doing. They were discussing things, and I'm sure that he was bouncing stuff off of Gino because Gino Auriemma could have left many times. His dad could have left St. Anthony's many, many times. When you're talking about the type of person Dan Hurley is, he loves challenges. But this is kind of a challenge that he wasn't ready for. The Kentucky one would have been kind of a lateral move, but he's already on top of the mountain right now in college basketball. You don't need to take that for a few extra bucks. I was reading this to Ben about what Ned Lamont said. He wants to make Dan Hurley the highest paid coach in college basketball. So let them do the business. He's always said, my agent handles the business. I do the basketball. And that's probably why he's coaching right now. And these kids are getting another lesson in what the future is going to look like under Dan Hurley.
Yeah, Rob, I think when he turned down Kentucky and said he never wanted to coach at another college, maybe the NBA way down the road, he gave away his leverage. And when things weren't working when things weren't progressing with UConn the way he was hoping they would or as fast as they would, I think, his agent had probably advised him, we need to shake something up here to get UConn to move the needle, and I think that's exactly what they did. You're right. The NBA is a completely different thing. He knows that. If he went to the NBA, he would have to adjust his personality and his approach for that. But I just kind of got a laugh, last week. He's always talking about helicopter parents, wanting kids whose parents aren't going to be, interfering. And then imagine having LeBron James as a player and a helicopter parent on the same team. That it goes against everything that he was about. So no, I just didn't think it would. I just did not think he would go. From what I understand, he was serious about it, that he was agonizing over it, even as late as last night. People who talked to him last night weren't sure what he was going to do. I was up here early this morning trying to sniff something out, but it just wasn't a fit. And by the way, the numbers that were being thrown out there were way overblown. 6 years for $70 million. That's not much more than he's going to get at UConn if they do make him the highest paid coach in the country.
All right, I want to go back to that Ned Lamont comment. Dibs just pointed that out to me. That he's been quoted to say top paid in college. Well, like top paid is in number one because he is number 7 right now. And I've always found this just being in my sports bubble. And when I get into the political realm of sports, whether it's a stadium that's trying to be built with tax dollars, whether it's something to do with tax dollars, I always think it's a no-brainer. But I live in a sports bubble where I think everything sports should be positive. And I come to find out when the vote sets in, I'm on the side of 30%. Now, that's not Connecticut. You guys know this area a lot better than I do, especially you, Dom, there with the Hartford Courant. What will that play out politically? A, do you think that that's going to happen where Ned Lamont actually signs a check to put him over Bill Self in Kansas and be the number one guy? And B, will the rest of the community want that and accept that as taxpayers?
Well, I think that the governor got involved in this. I think he got involved in it during the weekend when I believe he's been in contact with UConn people, and I'm sure he's told them, if that's what, find out what it takes, and let's try to do what it takes to keep them. But there are political implications. There is political red tape. It's a state school, and that's why I think things did not move as quickly as maybe Dan wanted, or maybe go up as high as Dan wanted. But I'm sure that for Dan to turn the Lakers down, he's got some guarantees that he's getting something that he wanted, and I would have to believe that's it. He's going to be a lot closer to 9 or 10 million. Obviously, with the school's operating budget, the state's operating budget, a couple of $1 million more is not a big deal. It's more the optics of it that, hey, you got all these problems, you're cutting budgets, there's going to be some issues, but ultimately it's going to go through. He's going to get something that he's satisfied with, and eventually whatever blowback there is will die down because winning tends to do that.
True. Now, that it's a relief that he's staying and stuff. How excited is the fan base? I know my wife, she's alum. She's elated. She was more, she said this, she texted me. She goes, I would have been more heartbroken if Dan Hurley left than if you left me.
What?
So that's what my wife actually said to me today. So as far as and I truly believe that, by the way, as far as their fan base, how excited do you think the fan base is now that Dan Hurley is staying?
Well, first of all, I would be more brokenhearted if you left, Rob.
There you go.
Who the hell else is going to put me on the radio?
Thank you, Dom.
Same here.
But as far as I'm concerned, how excited is the fan base? Just look at Twitter or look at X, look at Instagram, look at all those things. Obviously, the fan base is ecstatic. I think a lot of people were really worried that they were going to lose him. I'm glad that there wasn't a big circus outside of Gamble today. That would have been. I didn't need that on my bingo card, but. That's not an indication of. It's funny. I took a picture to show that there wasn't much going on out here, and people were saying, "Oh well, really, Storrs, Connecticut, what a sleepy place." It's a college campus in the middle of
finals
of a barn.
Yeah,
right. But no, the fan base is obviously super excited. They should be, and they should be much like the players. Hey, this guy turned down the Lakers to stay here and coach in Connecticut. That should be no no doubt there as to how big time a job this is, coaching Connecticut, and how big time Connecticut basketball is. So it's a great win for everybody involved. And the only thing I can't see here is what the Lakers got out of it, because they kind of look bad. I mean, I think they probably thought they could say, "Hey, we tried to get Dan Hurley," but that's whoever they hire now is going to be in a tough spot.
Well, even though we don't have to really think of this as being the reality, I do think it's important to think of what if he would have taken that job and what the next step would have been for UConn, like monumental, all the different things that could have happened. Could you explain to the audience, like, what some of the things that probably were being talked about on the weekend if this went the other way, if Dan Hurley was the Lakers coach? Now all of a sudden there is a question mark of who the head coach will be for UConn men's basketball here in early June.
I don't think they would have had much choice but to stay in-house and make one of the assistants the head coach. I think Luke Murray probably would have gone with Hurley, and Kamani Young would have been the head coach. He's certainly capable of doing that, but under the circumstances, as maybe an interim head coach, the players have 30 days to go, and it would have had 30 days to go, and I'm sure many of them would have. Some would have. He would have had to scramble to fill out the roster. I mean, it would have been a disaster for UConn, and it would have taken years to dig out of it. So, that's the thing. Because of the late date, June 10th, Dan played as a pretty good business play here, pretty good poker play, because UConn was staring at disaster if he left, I think. I mean, no one's indispensable. Eventually, they would have gotten somebody here to coach, or maybe Kamani would have taken hold and done well. It wouldn't surprise me. He's a very capable man. But under the circumstances, it would have been a disaster if he left on June 10th.
As far as the landscape, I mean, they have the same agent, so Gino Auriemma gets a 5-year extension. Governor Lamont's talking about making him highest paid, but I obviously think things look good for women's basketball and men's basketball at UConn.
Hey, how could they look any better? I mean, I've never heard Gino so giddy about the following year's team as he was the other night. Maybe some wine was behind that, as well as the prospects of healthy players and the roster he's got. But he's very excited, very happy with what he's got and how it's coming together, and rightfully so. I think they're going to have a great year, and there's no reason to believe after what they've done twice that the men can't have a great year. So I think all that's good. And one thing I think it's very important for people to understand: Gino's contract was up. He only had another year or so on it, and he told them in January or February that he wanted to stay, wasn't going to retire. So they've been working on that for quite a while. This was not a case of, they prioritized Gino over Dan at all. The Gino talks started long ago, and they finished, and the plan was to have Gino done and Dan right after that on the heels of it. So no one should feel like anybody prioritized one over the other. Things just kind of played out the way they played out.
Don Amore from the Hartford Courant, we appreciate the time on short notice, sir. And before you leave, we definitely want to get your thoughts on Hook C baseball. UConn, Jim Penders had a phenomenal season once again, making it the Super Regionals. We got blasted on Friday, okay? All right, let's move on. Saturday was an extra innings game that we fell short, and this Tibbs guy, the ACC Player of the Year, he was just amazing to watch from Florida State all year. What's the next step for Coach Penders and this roster? Like, what do they need to get over the hump of the Super Regionals and get back to Omaha?
Well, we were talking yesterday, when they landed, and I think he kind of agreed with my idea. To get through the regional, you need a lot of good pitchers. To get through a Super Regional, you really need a couple of great pitchers, a couple of aces. So, I think he could keep working the portal. I think the Division III transfer route to Division I is going to be a thing. I think they're on the ahead of the curve with that. I think that's going to be where a lot of talent comes from. But as far as getting through a Super Regional, they're going to have to find a way to get that. Well, there's one or two elite arms that can really shut down this caliber of team back-to-back in a 3-game series. So I thought 2011, if they had gotten Matt Harvey, I think they would have won that Super Regional. 2022, if Reggie Crawford hadn't gotten hurt, I think they might have won that Super Regional at Stanford. So they needed a couple of elite pitchers to go with a deep staff to get through the combination of a double elimination regional and a 3-game super, and then a double elimination first part of the CWS, and then a 2 out of 3 championship series. That's what they need. So they've got to find a way to get more pitching and a couple of real ace quality pitchers. And then I think they could do it.
Tom Amore, your Prince. I know you're hanging out there in stores. We appreciate it, and we will talk to you soon, my friend. Kind of big sigh of relief here in Connecticut today.
Thank you, Don.
But I thought my stakeout days were over with George Steinbrenner, but I had to polish off that skill.
There you go. We'll probably see you on Hurley's front lawn tonight.
All right.
There you go.
Yeah, you got it.
Love you, Dom.
Right.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
All right, when we come back, who we had over the weekend? Did anybody have door knock in here? Anybody? Jason Worth source? No, we were told don't take door knock.
Yeah, who told us that?
Door number 1. All right, who we had coming up on the Rob Dibble Show with Ben Darnell after this.